My name's Matt Flynn and I'm a lecturer in music industries at the University of Liverpool. Today I'm going to give you a short workshop that will hopefully give you some insight into helping you start to think about how you develop a career in music, particularly from the perspective of a musician. The workshop's really aimed at all types of musicians, whether you're an artist, a writer, producer, session player, composer, or even those you're thinking of maybe looking at going into music management or event management, those types of things. And it's designed to give an insight into the types of modules that we offer for music industries on the undergraduate program at Liverpool. Regardless of what situation you're listed on the screen, whether you think about going to university, about to decide which university to go to, about to start university, or even if you've decided not to go to university or not study music at university, or if you still just don't know, hopefully there'll be something in this workshop for you that gets you to think about how you progress your career, regardless of what situation you're in, and what these different sort of circumstances illustrate is that irrelevant of the circumstances that you find you're in, you need help making what are quite big decisions in terms of your career development. And therefore the aims of this session are going to outline what a career in music looks like, certainly for musicians, how university is just one step and one option on the way to a career, which most of you will have already started on the path towards. It's going to introduce a model for making decisions about your career based on research I've conducted with students, music students, both at the Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts and University of Liverpool, and then more broadly with the professional musicians across the UK. Then I'm going to demonstrate how that model can be of use to you. And then I'll signpost you to some further resources, readings, books, podcasts, blogs, and those types of things that you can start to engage with now, so you don't have to wait until you arrive at university, or if you decide to pursue your career in another way, things that you can engage with to help you make more informed decisions and choices as you go along. So the first thing to sort of establish is that as musicians, you're the center of the music economy. You can see here from the graph by UK Music, which is the trade body that represents the interests of the wider music industries to the UK government, that this line here represents music creators, which broadly includes musicians, session musicians, composers, arrangers, music producers. And so you can see that music creators, musicians, contribute almost half of the 5.2 billion generated by the UK music industries in 2019. And so they contribute almost as much as all the other aspects of the music industries, music retail, recorded music, music managers and those types of things, music publishing and live music put together. And they also account for over 2/3 of the workforce, in fact, almost 3/4 of the workforce, employing, there's 190,000 musicians working in UK music, and they contribute to that £2.5 billion every year. And in terms of exports, if you think about the success of the likes of Ed Sheeran or Adele or Calvin Harris internationally, you can see why UK music industries generate, an artist in particular, generate so much additional revenue in terms of exports. But when we start to dig down into those headline figures, this report from the Musicians Union in 2012 shows a different picture of the type of working patterns that musicians have. The bubbles in pink show how professional musicians that were surveyed, and there's about 2,500 musicians surveyed in the survey, show how they identify as musicians, predominantly their primary, what they think of themselves as. So the majority of musicians surveyed in the Musicians Union think about themselves as performing artists. followed by teachers. The sort of sludgy grey colour represents how most of them earn their money. So even though most of them, only 20% identify as teachers, 60% of musicians earn some of their income from teaching. And so this is what is known as a portfolio career, where most musicians don't just do one thing. Very few musicians get the opportunity to do one thing for an extended period of time. What they need to do is work across a series of projects, performing different roles in different ways, often at the same time or simultaneously, or successively across projects to build a career. And in terms of building a career, most musicians, despite the what we see in the sort of the tabloid press and online on social media, the majority of musicians earn modest incomes. A lot of musicians work part-time as musicians and do something else to support their activities. And as you can see here, 35% of musicians in the same survey earn somewhere between £10,000 and £20,000 a year. And that mean average wage of all the musicians surveyed in the UK Music Report works out at around 15k. And then you have more professionalised musicians who earn upwards of sort of £30,000 a year. So the sort of 15k mark is about national living wage in the UK this year. So really musicians are trading off, you know, the ability to earn, most musicians are trading off the ability to earn a lot of money against having the opportunity to earn money by doing what they're passionate about. But if we break all this down, really what a portfolio career breaks down into is a portfolio of projects. And this is something that you will be already familiar with through the experience you've gained as a musician to date, whether that's been playing in the school or community orchestra, and this is or singing in the community choir. So these are long-standing projects that you join for a period of time. You fulfill a role within. That's defined by the instrument that you play, your skill set and your ability, the style and genres that you're interested in, and also sort of to a certain extent, if you think about projects such as bands, by their sort of commercial status and history. So the difference between an emerging band or a heritage act, acts that have been around for a long time and sort of make money on the fact that bands like the Rolling Stones who sort of do lots of big tours, but really aren't that interested in releasing new recorded music anymore. For some of you, that might be a function musician. Some of you may already be playing wedding gigs and those types of things. Or some of these band projects may just be within the college setting. For others of you, you may have already started either recording yourself in the studio or recording other projects. And so again, that's a different role that you fulfill as a producer. And again, many of you will find that you fulfill multiple roles across different projects at different times. And again, that's all part of the portfolio career. Some of you may well compose, either sort of for some of you may be composing pieces for chamber music or those types of things, or for college projects. Some of you may have already started composing for pieces of media, content online, those types of things, and eventually they may well develop into careers in terms of film and TV and those types of things. And also with portfolio projects, you need to think about each project as a project within a project. So each rehearsal is a project building up to a big performance, or going in the studio to record a track, maybe a project as part of a bigger album project or band project. So most things that get managed in the music industries and most things that we have to make decisions about are to do with project management. And also, obviously, coming from educational backgrounds and some of the things that you'll still be doing at university, a research project and the skills that you pick up here in terms of the business skills and those types of things that you're going to need to have to forge a portfolio career as a musician. Research, whether it be researching topics in a college setting or doing market research to understand how to better develop your project in the future, all these skills are relevant. And so really your journey is already started. On on a music career, you've already been involved in projects, and really this is the foundation of most of the type of work that you will do across your career. What you're hoping to do is professionalize it, and one of the options you have to help professionalize your career is to come and study at university. And so you may be starting to think about, or have already made a decision to study at university. And you might well be in the situation currently where you decide on which is the best university for you. Now, in terms of decision making, there's an awful lot of rich variety of research on what decisions are and what decision making is. But for the purposes of today, we're just going to keep it nice and simple with the Oxford English Dictionary definition. And sort of, basically a decision is you have a range of options in front of you and you elect your preferred option, and that sort of drives a course of action or forms an opinion or those types of things. So let's have a look about how decision making may well sort of how you may start to think about your career and how university fits into that career. And this is the point where in the workshop where you could, now you've got a bit of context, where you can maybe want to pause the video and maybe write down the answers to these questions. You may have already made decisions about these questions that I'm going to pose you. You may be thinking about them currently, or there may be something that you want to return to in the future. So if you're thinking about joining, you're trying to decide which university is the right one for you. Certainly one of the questions you will have is, does the curriculum, does the environment, does the location of the university fit with the type of musician that you aspire to be? And you may be weighing the options between different universities, and some of them may be strong in some areas and not so strong in others. And so that's one of the things that you really need to consider. And in the research that I've conducted with lots of musicians, I would call these role types of decisions. These are the types of decisions that enable you to develop yourself as a musician and the skills and abilities that you have. And those skills and abilities then become valuable in terms of you fulfilling roles in projects. And that brings us around to the next decision, really, is once, does the university have the people in terms of the staff and the student body and the types of projects, both within the curriculum and extracurricular projects through music societies, and also the things that you can form within the wider music sector where the university is located, to enable you to apply those skills and then develop repertoire around those skills. So you're building up your musical knowledge and your experience all the time. And so because we're talking about a repertoire of skills and a repertoire of music, we frame these as repertoire decisions. Once you've started to get involved in projects, and you will have experienced this already through the project experiences that you've already had, obviously you want those projects to get noticed. One of the reasons why everyone performs as a musician is to communicate and with audiences and get noticed for the projects and what they do. And so the next question is, will it enable you to engage with more professional musicians, people within the industry, to get sort of noticed on your sort of initial steps to start to professionalize the activities that you're undertaking? And I would call these representation decisions. So this is really where sort of the project moves out of the rehearsal room or the studio and into the public domain. And all of a sudden you have to maybe market and promote to get people to the show, or you have to start to put a track up online. And all of a sudden you're moving it from the sort of creative process predominantly to one which is much more focused about engaging, getting noticed by the public. Once you do that, you then start to build a portfolio and a profile and start to become hopefully known for doing certain things. And so we call, and so you need to think about, does the university enable you to build a profile and develop a portfolio of work that will be very useful for you to further your professional career once you leave? And I would call these reputation decisions, because really the thing that you mainly trade on as a musician or anyone in the music industry is the reputation that you build. This is the thing that develops new opportunities. And certainly when you've started to get a good reputation, when, as opposed to represent yourself to the market and you're seeking opportunities, reputation means people start to offer you opportunities, and that's how it sort of flips. And then finally, you know, you start to develop a reputation, then you can start to reasonably expect that you might start to get some paid work. And so, you know, again, does the university that you're thinking about offer you the chance to start to engage in some sort of professional level of work, whether that's as a function musician, a session musician, start to earn some money through putting tracks up on Spotify, whatever it might be. And again, we call these remuneration decisions, which is just a big contractual word for getting paid. So these 5 sort of decision points, you know, working in a sequence, they're much more fluid than the linear way that they've been expressed here. But these decisions also sort of represent a model for thinking about how the different types of decisions that you're faced with need to be consider different areas and aspects of your career. So the roles related to you, your personal development and your skills and where you want to be and how you want to be. Then the projects that those skills fit into, where you can make the most of those skills and working with other people who have the skills that complement yours. And then how, once you're working in those projects, how to best represent those projects to the markets, and which representatives, maybe managers, agents, session fixers, whoever it might be, that you could work with to help you better do that. That hopefully builds a reputation, both on one side with your fellow musicians, so a sort of professional reputation with your fellow musicians, but also represent a reputation with audiences and clients, depending on what type of project it is. And then hopefully that works around to eventually making some money. This model also works if you think about it when you arrive at university and the questions change slightly. And again, this is the idea of the model, that it's a generic, very quite broad model that you then apply to the particular circumstance that you're in. So the question would be, you know, once you're at university, every semester really you're challenged with this question, you know, what are the best modules that for me to elect within my program that suit my sort of personal and professional development, my development of knowledge and skills. Which projects do I need to prioritize, join, form, pursue to get the experience that I need? So constantly having to make decisions about the types of projects that you want to be involved in and the types of whether to leave or join projects and form new projects. And they're constant, you know, constant decisions around what's the best thing to do. Just seem to have a slide issue. Oh, there we go. Who else do you need to connect with? Do some market research, find out the people in the local music community, you know, the promoters, the venue owners, the people who run the studios, to get noticed. And once you've got noticed, the next big question is, are you starting to get known for doing things both through your projects and the projects that you're involved in, but also you as an individual, and to the point where hopefully that people want to start recommending you to other people, and then those people start to get in touch with you directly. And so how does university help you achieve both of those things? Are the programs set up to connect you with local industry? Are the programs set up to connect you with the wider music community? Are the people in and around the university and the music community who are in a position to recommend you to other people so you develop professionally? And then finally, how do I start to get paid? And that comes to developing knowledge around copyright and contracts and fees and appropriate fees to play. And these are some of the things that we would cover in the music industry modules at University of Liverpool. So basically you have a model here, the 5 R's model, that you can apply at every career stage and to every situation. You can either apply it as a way of planning out a project. What is your role? What role do you need to assume to fulfill your aspirations? What projects do you need to be involved in? Who do you want to make music with? What type of music do you want to make from a repertoire point of view? Who do you need to take calculated risk with to actively engage with markets? Because calculated risks are about, to an extent, managing your reputation, and this is really important. And And then finally, when we start to really look at getting paid, then a lot of the times in the music industries, it's to do with shares of copyright or equity in projects or appropriate fees to charge. And so these questions are recurring questions around these sort of core decisions, these 5R decisions that you need to make as your career progresses over time. You can see from some of the research that I did with the professional musicians that these the weighting of these decisions, or how often musicians make these decisions, changes over time. So musicians in your situation, probably those who are sort of college students, undergraduates or postgraduates who are earning relatively small sums of money at this stage, mainly make repertoire and representation decisions because they're still forming projects, they're still trying to get noticed for those projects, and things like their reputation and their income, and even the roles, the importance of the roles still aren't yet fully formed. As you start to professionalize, and this is normally sort of as you get into your mid-20s and start to earn between £1,000 and £15,000 as a musician, then that slightly changes. Reputation and income become slightly more important. Music still remains important, but the role decisions are still being formed. For those musicians who started, you would now be considered professional, even though those in the 15 to 30K bracket, still a lot of them work part-time. You can see a significant shift here. Role decisions become really important, where they need to be, what skills they need to continue to earn income, which becomes much more important. And while music decisions remain important to all musicians through all their careers, those musicians who are generally older, predominantly London-based in this survey, who are in 30K and above, you can see a much more balanced overview of the type of the decisions that they make. Particularly reputation decisions become really, really important to those musicians who are already have established careers, and maintaining their reputation becomes really, really important to them. So as your career progresses, the balance and types of decisions that you make changes over time, and yet all these decisions remain important as you move forward throughout your career. So at every career stage, these decisions become increasingly important. But all of these decisions have some element of risk attached to them. And really, again, like decision making, there's an awful lot of research about what risk is and how risk is formulated. But for today, I just want to keep it nice and simple. And I want you to think about risk as either the risk of missing out on an opportunity, or the risk of pursuing an opportunity and that not working, so you lose out from that opportunity. So again, you can go back to our university example and the situation you're in currently. A role decision, you decide to go to a certain university, and you're not sure whether that's going to work out until you've been there for a while, whether you're happy there, whether the course is the right one for you. And also, one of the things with big role decisions is you don't necessarily have the opportunity to then compare and contrast that with another situation. So it's quite a big, risky decision, a role decision. And only after you've been probably at university for 6 months, a year, your first year there, but you have a real good sense of whether things are working out for you. So there's obviously quite big risks attached to role decisions. From a repertoire point of view, you may already be in existing projects through that you've developed yourself, or through college that you might want to further pursue. So there may be projects that you've already got going on where you are that you're going to have to leave to come to university, and so and those projects may have potential, and so you might be leaving that potential behind. So again, that's another risk. That's more a risk of losing out. From a missing out perspective, obviously what university offers is a whole host of new opportunities to be the type of musician that you want to be. And unless you get involved and explore them and try some things out, you're never really going to know. So that from a project opportunity, from an engagement with the market opportunity, university is a great place to come to explore the type of musician you want to be and meet like-minded people. And so by not coming, you face the risk of not having those opportunities. Once you're at university, you may be, you may be quite known in your local community, within your college, within your music scene, as being someone who's very good at the things that they do already. But obviously transferring to a new place means you have to start to build your reputation all over again, engage in the community. And obviously there's a risk there, particularly if you're going to a community where there's going to be lots more people who are similar to you with similar skills and abilities. And so there's much more competition in that new community to develop a reputation. Finally, remuneration is the, we're all aware of the fees and the costs of going to university, and is that the best investment of your money and potentially time to help you achieve the things that you want to achieve. And then also there's always the risk of the unforeseen circumstances that we all face, which are things that we've just experienced with the global pandemic and a complete change in how we need to behave. So the impact on the live music sector and musicians having to adapt and change and start doing online gigs and those types of things. But one of the great things about having a portfolio career and musicians being always having to work across projects is they are very adaptable to new circumstances and new situations. So really, hopefully what I've tried to demonstrate with this workshop is the importance of knowing what type of decision that you're making. Very often musicians particularly will confuse repertoire decisions about their music with marketing decisions, representation decisions. So putting a track up on SoundCloud, a lot of musicians will think is a musical decision, when actually it's a marketing one. And that's important because you have much more control over the outcomes of a musical decision as a musician than you do about whether people respond or react to your track online. And so just fundamentally understanding the different types of decisions and also the ranges of outcomes that those decisions, when you'll find out the sort of results of those decisions, is important to understand. And if that's the one thing you take away from this workshop, that would be fantastic. So yeah, role decisions are normally quite big transitional decisions that move you around into new environments and new places, help you develop new skills, and predominantly you don't really know the outcome for quite a long time. Whereas repertoire decisions are those in-project creative decisions. You tend to get pretty much immediate feedback. At the most, if it's a long project, it might take a couple of months, a long period of rehearsal, a musical theatre show, say, and then the opening night, and you get reviews or those types of things. But more often than not, in project, it's normally quite quick. Representation decisions are really the bridge between what you control within the project and it entering the market, and particularly as soon as you start to work with other industry professionals, managers, A&Rs, agents, or clients, musical supervisors on films or film directors or whatever it might be, the projects increase in risk. And very often you won't really know the outcomes of those decisions depending on what type of project it is for around 3 to 6 months. And again, reputation decisions are very often consequences of the earlier role, repertoire, and representation decisions that you've made. These are crucial to the development of your career, particularly maintaining a reputation with your fellow musicians, and are very often represented by the types and quality of contracts you get and your negotiating position within those contracts. And depending on the type of contracts that you get, if it's a one-off contract for a wedding gig or something, then it's pretty, you negotiate a fee, the feedback's pretty immediate. But for those longer term contracts to do with copyrights or commitments to certain projects, you might not know the outcome for 6 to 12 months. And then finally, remuneration decisions, the financial decisions, fundamentally underpin everything that you're doing. But really what's important here is when you start to think about copyright or your equity share in projects, really remuneration decisions define your individual share of what the project collectively earns. So if this is like a live performance stuff, then you pretty much tend to find out you get your gig fee within 1 to 3 months. But if this is for like a record contract or for a commission to compose for a film, then really you're not really going to know the outcome and how much you're going to earn through royalties and those types of things for quite an extended period of time. So I hope this has given you an introduction to the 5 R's model. I hope you can start to see how this could apply to helping making more informed choices about your career as you move forward. Quick summary of some recommended reading for you. There's a book by Cal Newport called So Good They Can't Ignore You. It's not music specific, but it talks about developing rare and valuable skills that will help you make you valuable. Focus on the things that you're good at and really honing down and developing them that will make you valuable in the market and make people want to bring you into projects for being able to do the thing that you do specifically. In terms of project management, there's a book by Jonathan Weiss called Project Management for Musicians, which talks about all sorts of different ways from budgeting to planning tours and all those types of things, which is really useful to dip in and out of when you've got specific things that you need to work with and manage. From a marketing and business strategy point of view, again, this is not music specific, but Dave Parrish's book, Chase One Rabbit, is really informative in terms of different strategies to thinking about different ways for creatively minded people who it's pitched that to market. In terms of reputation and the importance of contracts in the music industry, Music the Business by Anne Harrison is the go-to book on the UK music industries, and it's written, Anne is a lawyer, and so it talks about the details of contracts and all those types of things, and is really a good book to read in advance of any music industry course or music industry modules that you will take. And then finally, UK Music Royalties Made Easy is a short, simple book that explains the real complexity of the performing, how music publishing works and what the Performing Rights Society does and what PPL does in terms of how they license the use of music in the UK, collect money for it, and then pay that to writers and performers like yourselves. You can supplement some of these things with certainly a book that explains the sort of, starts to explain in relatively simple terms the complexities of decision making and also risk by St. Tillian and Schreiber, Managing Organizations in the Creative Economy. And then some more sort of easy to engage with sources are the blog Soda Jerker, which has a podcast on songwriting and interviews established songwriters about their process. Ari's Take is about being a DIY musician. It's a blog and there's also a book. Music Business Worldwide is the sort of the go-to blog that most people in the music industry read to find out what's going on day to day in the music industries. And the Centric Music blog is practical tips on how to get syncs, how to register your rights and your royalties, and sort of collect your royalties. And so will help in terms of the practicalities of what's explained in the UK Music Royalties Made Easy book. And then the Farnham Street blog is a sort of a broader blog on decision making that you can sort of go in and look at different models, and the 5 R's model is just one of many ways of thinking about the music industry. So to conclude, this 5R model is something that you can apply, both in terms of overall planning projects, so sequentially looking at the role, the repertoire, representation, and remuneration of a particular situation. Or it could be something that you can use in the moment when you're faced with making a decision to help you quickly sort of sum up what type of decision it is that you're making, that you're faced with. So you understand the parameters of the decision a bit more, and the sort of the consequences in terms of when you're most likely to understand the outcome and those types of things, and therefore make a better evaluation of the level of risk of those decisions. It's one part of the things that we teach it on the music industries modules at University of Liverpool, but we'll cover in much more detail things like copyright, contracts, also applying for actual music industry jobs, working in music industry companies, how to develop CVs, how to do interview techniques, and all those types of things. So this is just an insight into one element of how we think about getting you to become ever-improving professionals over time. So all that remains is me to thank you for your time, and with every aspect of life, but particularly in the music industries, which is a very complex and therefore industry that's has an awful lot of random events in. With any aspect of people who have been successful in their careers. They will always cite elements of good luck. So it remains for me to wish you good luck with your future careers, and with the decisions that you make, wherever they are, and whatever you decide to do in terms of your future development, which university, whether to go to university. I wish you the very best of luck. Here is the bibliography that is refers to all the sources referenced in the presentation and all the books listed as further reading. Thanks very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the presentation.